Have you ever been told something so many times that you stopped hearing it? Have you ever thought, they just don't understand my life, only to realize years later that they understood it better than you ever did? And if you could go back, would you listen sooner? When I was 18, my father gave me one piece of advice. He didn't say it loudly. He didn't force me to follow it. He just repeated it quietly over and over again. Don't chase quick money. Build something that lasts. At the time, I thought it was outdated. I had just entered university. The world felt wide open. Everywhere I looked, people were getting rich fast. Online businesses, trading, shortcuts, opportunities that seemed too good to ignore. And I didn't want to be slow. I didn't want to wait 10 years for success. I wanted results. Now. So I smiled when my father spoke. I nodded politely. And then I did the exact opposite. I jumped from one opportunity to another. First, it was a small online shop. It failed, then crypto. I made some money, then lost even more. Then a great business idea with friends that collapsed after 6 months. Each time I told myself, this is just part of the journey. Each time I believed the next thing would finally work. And each time my father said nothing. He never said, I told you so. He never criticized me, but sometimes I would catch him watching me, quietly, as if he already knew how the story would go. Years passed. At 23, I was tired. At 25, I was confused. At 27, I was broke. Not just financially, but mentally. I had spent nearly a decade chasing speed. And all I had were unfinished plans and a long list of regrets. One night, I came home late. The house was quiet. My father was sitting alone in the living room, reading an old book. He looked up and asked gently, Are you tired? I didn't answer right away, because for the first time, I didn't want to pretend anymore. Yes, I said. He nodded as if he had been waiting for that answer. Then he closed his book and said something I had heard 100 times before. Then stop running, start building. The same words, the same calm voice. But this time, something felt different. For the first time, I wasn't hearing them as advice. I was hearing them as truth. And suddenly everything made sense. All those years, I thought I was being brave, but I was just being impatient. I thought I was chasing opportunity, but I was avoiding commitment. And the hardest part? The lesson I spent 10 years learning was given to me in a single sentence from the very beginning. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just sat down next to my father, and for the first time in my life, I listened. The next morning felt unfamiliar, not because anything had changed outside, but because something had shifted inside me. For years, I woke up with urgency, check messages, look for new opportunities, chase something, anything that might finally work. But that morning, I didn't rush. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while, staring at nothing in particular. And for the first time in years, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. What have I actually built? Not what I started, not what I tried, not what I almost became. What had I truly built? That was still standing? The answer was painful, nothing. Just ideas that faded, projects that never lasted, moments of excitement, followed by quiet failure. I realized something uncomfortable. I had been addicted, not to success, but to beginnings, the thrill of starting something new, the illusion that this time would be different. But I never stayed long enough to find out. That afternoon, I sat down with a notebook. No laptop, no phone, no distractions. And I wrote one sentence at the top of the page: build something that lasts. It felt simple, almost too simple. But for the first time, I didn't try to turn it into something complicated. I made a decision. No more jumping, no more chasing, just one path. I chose something small, something realistic, something slow. It wasn't exciting. It didn't promise fast money. In fact, if someone had shown it to the old me, I probably would have ignored it immediately. But this time, I stayed. The first few weeks were uncomfortable. There was no instant reward, no quick results, no feeling of I'm getting ahead, just repetition, learning, trying, failing in small ways, and fixing them. It felt quiet. And honestly, a part of me kept whispering, "You're wasting time. You could be doing something bigger." But every time that thought appeared, I remembered my father's voice. Don't chase quick money. So I kept going. One day turned into a week turned into a month, and something strange began to happen. For the first time, I saw progress that didn't disappear. It wasn't dramatic, no one noticed, but I could feel it. In skills getting stronger, decisions getting clearer, confidence, slowly, returning. Not the loud fake confidence I used to have, but something quieter, something real. One evening, while working, I realized I hadn't thought about quitting all day. That had never happened before. I sat back in my chair and smiled, because for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't chasing something anymore. I was building it. And maybe, just maybe, this was what my father had been trying to show me all along. Months passed, quietly. There were no big moments, no sudden breakthroughs, no dramatic changes that made a good story. If someone had looked at my life from the outside, they might have said, "Nothing is happening." But inside, everything was changing. I started to notice small things. I could focus longer without getting distracted. I didn't feel the urge to check my phone every few minutes. I stopped comparing myself to people who seemed ahead. For the first time, I was fully present in what I was doing. And strangely, that felt like progress. Before, I used to measure success by speed, how fast I could make money, how quickly things were growing, how soon I could say, "I made it." Now, I measured something different. Consistency. Did I show up today? Did I do the work? Even when I didn't feel like it? That became enough. One afternoon, an old friend called me. We hadn't spoken in a long time. He sounded excited. "I've got something big," he said. "A new opportunity. Fast money. You should join me." I smiled because I knew that voice. It sounded exactly like mine. A few years ago. "What is it?" I asked. He explained everything quickly. Big promises, low risk, high reward. The kind of thing that would have pulled me in instantly before. There was a moment of silence. I could feel the old part of me waking up. The part that wanted excitement, the part that hated slow progress, the part that believed this could be the one. For a few seconds, I was tempted. Then I looked at my desk, at the notes I had written, at the work I had been building, piece by piece, at the quiet progress that no one else could see, and I asked myself a simple question. Do I want to start over again? The answer came quickly. No. My friend kept talking, trying to convince me. "It's different this time," he said. "It's going to work." I took a deep breath. "I'm not doing it," I replied. There was a pause on the other end. "Why?" he asked. I thought for a moment, because the truth wasn't complicated anymore. "I'm building something," I said, "and I don't want to leave it halfway." He didn't understand. I could hear it in his silence, and that was okay, because a few years ago, I wouldn't have understood either. After the call ended, I sat there for a while, not feeling proud, not feeling excited, just calm. And that calmness meant more than any quick win I had ever chased. That evening, my father walked past my room. He didn't say anything, but he glanced at my desk, at the work I was doing, and gave a small nod. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but somehow it felt like the biggest approval I had ever received. And in that quiet moment, I realized something important. I wasn't just building a future anymore. I was becoming the kind of person who could actually keep it. The changes didn't happen all at once. There was no single day where everything suddenly worked. Instead, it was a series of quiet moments, so small that I almost missed them. The first time I solved a problem on my own, without feeling overwhelmed. The first time I looked at something I built and didn't feel the urge to start over. The first time I trusted my own decisions without needing validation from others. These moments didn't feel powerful at the time, but when I looked back, they were everything. Because for years I had been searching for something outside of me, the right opportunity, the perfect timing, the fastest way forward. But now I was building something inside: patience, discipline, focus. Things that couldn't be bought and couldn't be rushed. One evening, I sat down to review my progress, not in terms of money, not in terms of success, but in terms of consistency. And for the first time, I saw a pattern. I had shown up almost every day, not perfectly, not always motivated, but I stayed. That was new. Before, I only stayed when things felt exciting. Now I stayed even when things felt boring. And somehow, that made all the difference. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A small result, not life-changing, not dramatic, but real. Something I built actually worked. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. And more importantly, it didn't disappear. I remember staring at it for a long time. Because in the past, every result I had was temporary. Money that came quickly, left just as fast. Opportunities that looked promising collapsed overnight. But this, it stayed. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. This is what my father meant. Not success, but stability, not speed, but direction. That night, I walked into the living room. My father was there again, sitting in his usual place. The same chair, the same quiet presence. I sat down across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said softly, "I think I understand now." He looked at me, not surprised, not emotional, just calm, as if this moment had always been part of the plan. "What do you understand?" he asked. I took a breath. "That it's not about finding the right thing quickly," I said. "It's about staying long enough for something to become right." He smiled, a small, gentle smile, and that was enough. Because for the first time, I wasn't just repeating his words, I had lived them. And somehow, that made them feel completely different. Time kept moving, as it always does. But now it felt different. Not faster, not slower, just clearer. I stopped counting how long things would take. I stopped asking, "When will I succeed?" and started asking something simpler. Did I do my part today? That question changed everything, because success was no longer something far away. It became something I could touch every single day, in the way I worked, in the way I focused, in the way I chose to stay instead of leave. The results continued to grow, slowly, quietly, not the kind that impresses people online, but the kind that builds a life. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing it because I knew how it was built. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of patience, repeated again and again. One evening, I found myself sitting next to my father again, no stress, no confusion, just a quiet sense of peace. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. After a while, I said, I wasted a lot of time. It came out naturally, no drama, no regret in my voice, just truth. My father looked at me and shook his head gently. You were learning, he said. I smiled, because maybe he was right. Maybe those 10 years weren't wasted. Maybe they were just expensive lessons, lessons I had to experience to truly understand. I looked at him and asked, why didn't you ever stop me? He paused for a moment. Then he said something I will never forget. Because some lessons cannot be given, he said. They have to be lived. I sat there quietly, letting that sink in, and for the first time, I felt grateful. Grateful for the failures, grateful for the confusion, grateful even for the years I thought I had lost. Because without them, I might have never listened. Not really. Before I heard my father's advice, now I understood it, and that made all the difference. If you're listening to this and you feel like you're behind, or like you've been chasing things that never last, maybe you don't need a new opportunity. Maybe you don't need a faster path. Maybe you just need to stop and ask yourself one simple question. What am I building that will still be here in 10 years? If you don't have an answer yet, that's okay. But when you find one, stay with it, even when it's slow, even when it's boring, even when no one else understands. Because one day, you might look back and realize the life you were searching for was built in those quiet, consistent moments all along. Thank you for listening. If this story made you reflect on your own journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to English and Future Ready. And maybe tonight, take a moment to listen to someone who has been quietly guiding you all along.